Overview. What is it? The most thorough and complete overhaul of the Ariel Atom in its 20-year history. I know, a passing glance won't convince you much has changed. You might pick up the new intake hood, a hint that the stance is meaner, that something's different about the nose. So to help you out, here's a comprehensive list of every single part that has been carried over: the pedal box, the fuel cap, the steering wheel and top 6 inches of the steering column. That's it. Everything else is new. Everything. Broadly speaking, atoms have gained a number when the engine has changed. The 1999 Atom 1 used a Rover K series, the Atom 2 came along with the switch to Honda Power in 2003. But the chassis, packaging and so on remained largely the same. Sure, the handling was tweaked over the years, but the steps were small, evolutionary. So when Ariel got the spec for the current Civic Type R's turbo engine from Honda 4 years ago, and discovered they'd need more space to accommodate the 2.0-liter, it was a kickstart. If a new rear end of the chassis was needed, why not a whole new chassis with thicker steel tubes? Why not rethink the suspension design? Why not design and develop the whole thing on CAD? And why not put it through an aerodynamics program as well? The team used the opportunity to go through the Atom with a fine-tooth comb and instigate every change and counter every niggle they had. And yep, this means there's now a self-arming and disarming immobilizer that never has to leave your pocket. It's basically a keyless system for a car with no doors. The basics then. Still a tubular steel frame, albeit wider to create more room inside. Engine at the back driving the rear wheels through the Civic's 6-speed manual gearbox. As before, the whole powertrain is Honda's, from gearbox to catalyst pack. Ariel has to run its own AQ, and is currently deciding on final power figures. The test car had 3 switchable maps, likely to be an optional extra, that varied power between 220 bhp, 290 bhp and 320 bhp. Weight has gone up slightly to 595 kilograms, but that still yields a maximum power-to-weight ratio of 538 bhp ton, pushed along by a not insignificant 310 pound-feet of torque at 3,000 revolutions per minute. Acceleration is predictably vivid, 0 to 60 miles per hour in 2.8 secs and 0 to 100 miles per hour in 6.8 secs. A top speed of 162 miles per hour is achieved by a huge reduction in aero drag, which also benefits high-speed acceleration. There's a whole new dash panel, seats, 2 small storage areas under the nose, the list goes on. In fact, there's a strong case for the Atom 4 being the most comprehensively designed and engineered lightweight car ever. But it comes with a major concern. It's turbocharged, so what about lag? I'm not going to talk about lag just yet, because there's a bigger change to the way this drives than the addition of turbocharging. The calmness and placidity of the new chassis and suspension. The old Atom, especially in supercharged guise, was, to put it mildly, a lively device. The engine dominated, the rest tried to keep up, tried to contain the explosive energy. This made it tremendously exciting, your bravery governed your progress. But also somewhat nerve-wracking. The Atom has now grown up and gained maturity. Which sounds ridiculous for a car with no windscreen, doors or roof. But this is a car which can now make largely unflappable and easy progress even on the bumpiest, trickiest of roads. The ride is supple, able to skate over potholes and bumps without deflecting the car from its course. It's comfortable, there's barely any tremor and fidget from the frame, it stays level around corners and under braking and acceleration. No hint of it getting fighty or light, it's planted, controlled and capable. With the worst of the road surface filtered out, you're more relaxed and can concentrate on the driving. This is just as well, because the Atom 4 is capable of generating colossal speed in very short timeframes. So, the question of lag. Is it an issue? Slightly, yes. Not in terms of response, because even before the turbo comes in, the 2.0-liter only has 595 kilograms to push against, so you feel it respond, and if you keep the revs high the delay is vanishingly small. But in practice we used the mid-range and there the engine is half a heartbeat behind the throttle. You put in a demand, the engine surges up to meet it, but the torque wave is slightly behind and slightly blunt. It doesn't quite have the millimetric precision that a naturally aspirated or supercharged engine delivers. This means you need to keep the engine on the boil if you want to get immediate response at the apex of a corner. No hardship, just drop a gear. But at least now you have options. You can drive at the power peak, or you can sit back and let the torque thrust you along, something it is ridiculously effective at. It's hard to judge accurately because the current rev counter is quite small, it's being changed for production, but let's say the handover is about 4,500 revolutions per minute. Stay below that and you've got this generous, well-mannered motor. Above it, the gloves are off. The performance is frankly ridiculous. It's supercar fast, Ferrari 488 or McLaren 720s pace, but with extra outdoors astonishment. This must be every bit as fast as an outgoing 3.5R car we timed at 2.8 to 60 miles per hour and 5.8 to 100 miles per hour, but instead of that high-pitched scream, there's now this dirty great Darth Vader inhale from next to your left ear. You can play tunes with the intake as the turbo sucks and squeals, but it's also worth keeping a set of earplugs in one of those storage areas under the nose. Two things about this performance though. The old car was self-limiting. The suspension got scary quite quickly and aerodynamics limited top-end shove. Neither of those is the case anymore. Which means the numbers on the dash get big very quickly, and you feel comfortable with them. Not good for license retention. As we keep saying, more speed, more capability is the way all sports cars are going, we just didn't think it would apply to lightweights. Not that the Atom 4 is short of feel or finesse. It's just that a filtering process has occurred. Yes, the steering now transmits fewer signals, it doesn't wriggle and kick back as much. But it's still wonderfully precise and the signals you get are the ones you need, the ones the suspension has decided had to be transmitted. The handling balance still errs towards understeer and despite Ariel's best efforts, the Atom isn't quite 911-esque in its ability to disguise the engine's position. It might have a longer wheelbase, but the weight distribution is still 35 to 65. Overall it's so much more friendly and adjustable now, back off mid-corner and the tail might start to move slightly, but it's a calm movement. Similarly if you get wheel spin, it's less spiky. Did I enjoy it? Absolutely. The thrills maybe be slightly harder to come by but only because the adrenaline and jeopardy have been toned down. Crucially, it's fun and usable in a much wider range of situations than the old one. Such as, it's wonderfully tractable around town. It'll happily pull away in second and if you turn the boost knob down to 1 for a paltry 220 bhp, you get a lot less noise from the intake. No throttle snatch or engine lumpiness, just pure professionalism. Because it rides well, there's masses of torque and your head isn't pummeled nearly as badly as before, it's comparatively comfortable to do distance in. Unless it rains. You will be able to order a full windscreen, but the management of airflow over the small deflector is really good, aided by the now more reclined seat angle. The gear change is still being finalized. To me it felt slightly loose in the gate, but the knob is being changed for a shorter, thinner one. As with everything Ariel does, this has been agonized over. You sit fractionally lower and because the sides are higher, feel safer and more enclosed. Just be warned you have to lift your legs higher when climbing in. The plastic seats are great, better shaped than many supercar firms can manage, although it's worth upgrading from the standard harnesses. However, it's the new dash panel that's the biggest advance, a proper color screen surrounded by a brilliantly logical panel of switches, knobs and buttons that were second nature to use after 10 minutes of night driving. There's even an auto setting for the lights, the sensor is in front of the gear lever. And those headlights are a massive improvement, a strong, straight beam with good range and brightness. The finish is typically great, up there with a BAC mono, but a third of the price. The driving position is close to faultless. I'd like a fraction more spacing between the pedals to aid driving in shoes other than racing boots. The steering weight is fine when maneuvering and the turning circle is now substantially tighter. Otherwise the experience hasn't changed fundamentally, this is still a car you're better off driving with a helmet. Improved airflow ain't gonna stop a stone. Ariel expects to start deliveries of the Atom 4 next spring. The spec is still being finalized, our car wearing such tasty items as a sports exhaust, single central exit instead of 2, which looks brilliantly symmetric, uprated AP racing brakes, tremendous stopping power, and gorgeous carbon wheels. Motorsport spec traction control will be available, as well as the 3-mode power setting and a whole host of extra bits. Entry price is £39,975 and Ariel has 120 orders to fulfill already, that's not far short of 2 years production. It's also aiming to have the car fully type approved, making export sales much easier. Economy? Well, there's a 40-liter fuel tank and into which I poured 27 liters after 160 miles of mixed driving, including bashing around Salisbury Plain, an evening drive through Bath and Bristol and a night shot along the M4. So that's near enough 27 mpg. Anything else worth considering? The Caterham 620S is the obvious one, being a tamer superfast Caterham than the 620R, but it's nothing like as finessed as the Atom, although it does have a roof and a bigger boot. The BAC Mono is way more extreme. The Elemental RP1 or Vool 05 are probably the cars that come closest. And remember the KTM X-Bow? That had the same sort of approach, but the execution was never right.